Welcome to Clever Orbits. I'm one of your hosts, Louis Brandmeier. With me, I have Dr. Richard Futrell.
Hello.
Today we're going to do our wrap-up podcast of The Matrix Revolutions, which is one of those films that I can't help but love and love more each and every day. Richard, we left a lot of loose ends, man.
Got a lot of details to discuss from Revolutions. A lot of
details. Yeah, man. There's some stuff about Agent Smith. There's some stuff about, the ambiguity of it. You want to start with this one? I did the opening salvo in the last one.
Let me find my notes.
So one of the things that I noticed is the train man. What's with all the watches, huh?
He has to be right on time.
I mean, like, there's such a thing as a digital. I mean, I guess if this was set in 1999, then.
No, the true time doesn't matter. What matters is the time inside the simulation that he's living in. It's the system time, the CPU clock. And you can imagine if the Matrix is implemented on a decentralized system with lots of different nodes, it might actually be hard for them to synchronize and agree about the time. This is actually a problem that exists in, like, cryptographic networks that are currently being developed. Is time synchronization. So, yeah, I think that makes quite a lot of sense. He would have to have multiple sources of information about time so he can cross-reference them.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's great. Explained easily and quickly. Impressive.
Put a big check mark next to that.
Put a check mark. So,
what do you make of the idea that when they're looking at Neo's brain patterns and he's trapped in the in-between place, when he's not jacked into the Matrix, his brain patterns still look like he is jacked into the Matrix?
Yeah, there's a whole thing to talk about around this. There's, I think it's Rama or whatever his name is, talks about you're in a place between this world and the machine world, a place where we smuggle programs in and out of the Matrix. And I wasn't even clear what that meant or what it means about Neo's. I mean, Neo's clearly his digital self-image. He's in the Matrix. He's executing and he's doing things and getting pushed against a wall. And so he's jacked back in, and in order for them to retrieve him, they jack him out of the Matrix after he gets somehow reunited with his physical body self. And so the nature of his connection. Did they
plug him in and then pull the plug out?
Yeah, I guess they plugged him in. And
I didn't see that.
How do they reformat him, I guess, into his body? That's the real interesting question. Maybe his mind just completely separated from his body, and his body was just kind of dormant for a while. Like that. That's interesting.
Well, at a mechanistic level, I had been pushing the idea when we were talking about Reloaded that there's actually software inside those plugs that are still embedded in their brains. And so maybe the way that Neo is interacting with the Matrix when he appears to be jacked in but isn't physically jacked in is maybe there's sort of Wi-Fi or some sort of broadcasting going on with those plugs. And that might also be the purely mechanistic, plot-based means that he has for controlling machines at a distance in the real world.
Because he's still got that programming inside of him.
Yeah. He's still got the hardware even is still in his brain. I'd imagine those aren't just plugs, right? Because they have to control and harvest an entire brain. That machine probably has metallic tendrils going all the way through the brain. It's probably laced up around every single neuron. So it's not like you pull the plug out and you're out.
Well, I wouldn't say every single neuron. I mean...
Yeah, that's a lot of neurons.
Billions, right? Billions. So
hundreds of billions.
Hundreds of billions. Maybe as many as 6 unique neurons. Or 6 billion. So
dozens of neurons.
Googleplex of neurons. I like Neo's new fashion development. The suit looks good on him. I thought that was really cool. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, Yeah, it was cool.
What do you think of the discussion of karma? The Indian guy, the Indian-looking program says karma is what you're sent here to do.
Yeah. I think it's great, given that our whole backdrop of discussion for this film is that Neo is meant to, quote-unquote, return to the source, and that's what he's here to do. And if he resists it, he suffers. And if he aligns with it and allows it and chooses it, he feels better. He ends up, doing something that makes a real difference for people. I mean, Now, karma, when it applies to programs, is interesting and weird.
Yeah, I mean, a program is programmed with a particular purpose, right? To run a power plant or
whatever. Yes. Oh, I thought you said PowerPoint.
No, that's more like what it would actually be like.
So it strikes me that there must be a whole realm. Your world is actually how Rama refers to it, which makes things even potentially more complicated. A realm within the Matrix that the architect and the oracle can't simply delete or control, that the machines basically can't overwrite. It's like a section of the code that's integral to the functioning of the overall program, but which cannot be rebooted, in which these rogue programs grow and develop, like Merovingian, Persephone, those twins. And it makes me really curious. So first of all, like, if you see that seems to be what's going on, namely also the train man has that thing going on, and then also what the administrative structure of the machines is. Like if Deus Ex Machina, which is the name of that face that Neo talks to at the end, does it rule them all, or is it more an embodiment of some sort of collective consciousness? Like, that's my question. What do you think about all that?
It must be a collective consciousness, because that's so much cooler.
Well, let's go with that. Yeah, it's much more interesting.
Yeah, so like the way I see it is that the machines are hacking into the Matrix in the same way that humans are hacking into the Matrix, but they use a different exploit. So humans hack into the Matrix via some way involving the telephone system, and the machines are hacking in via some other method which is under the control of the Merovingian. And when they enter into that exploit, it's represented to them like that train. And as for them being unable to be deleted, that's, presumably the Matrix would delete them if it could, because they're causing trouble. But they're hacking the Matrix themselves, just like the human. The Matrix would also immediately pull the plug on all the humans hacking in too if they could, but it can't, because they've hacked their way around the system.
Yeah, so it's interesting, because there's this whole suggestion that throughout the reboots of the Matrix, there are aspects that repeat. The prodigal child returns is something the Merovingian says about Seraph. And it led there's a lot of different theories about who Seraph is and what's going on with him. And one of them is that he is the machine's equivalent of the One, who ended up deciding that he was going to protect the Oracle instead. But then he does seem to have a limited power or a limited capacity for alteration of the Matrix. He seems to fight along with everybody else. There's this suggestion that maybe he was the Merovingian son. You kind of have to make a decision here. I mean, like, who is he and why is he whatever he is? And I think at most, or at least what we can say is he's a program from an earlier iteration of the Matrix who's decided to protect the Oracle. And why does he protect that which matters most, namely the Oracle? Well, because some people want the eyes of the Oracle, which is, the Oracle's way of predicting, or maybe she's got direct access to that predictive potential that the machines are using the humans for. Like, maybe she's able to see things to a degree that even the architects can't. I mean, there's all this talk about seeing the end of your choices, and that's why the Merovingian wants these eyes, and that's why Smith wants these eyes, and then once he gets the eyes of the Oracle, he sees his future, and I was standing right there, and I said this, and da-da-da-da-da. And so that, maybe the Oracle, and this whole rich livingness and life going on for the programs within the Matrix. Like they are beings unto themselves, just like the Cylons are in Battlestar Galactica. Like they're real living creatures that need to be dignified. So we hear about somebody saying, I consulted with the Oracle, and everyone knows the Oracle. Like it seems like within this realm where the Merovingian has free reign and programs have their own lives, that the Oracle is well known, and these are living beings, and these living beings deserve freedom. When Agent Smith says, hey, I want to be free of this place, in that first film, that isn't given much credence because he's painted as the basic dualistic kind of villain. But by the time of this film, the core kernel of his aspiration to be more than what he is nurtured and nourished in a sideways way by the guy Rama talking about, I love my daughter very much. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I'm trying to free her. I want her to be saved. I want her to survive. And so, somehow she escapes through this realm where, machines aren't able to overcode it, and she's able to get into the realm where Neo and the Oracle are, which, of course, itself gets overwritten by Smith, and we can talk about him in a second. But, yeah, I just thought it was so fascinating, and I'm kind of talking through figuring out what this all means and how this all works. What's your take on all this?
So the most intriguing thing to me about the Oracle in this movie is that Smith calls her Mom. That's interesting. And I feel like I saw some speculation on some forum or something that maybe the Oracle is actually the program that wrote all the other programs that exist in the Matrix. And that would make sense. I feel like so the Oracle is a program whose original purpose was to understand humans in the Matrix. So if you need someone to write a program that's going to allow you to mimic a human and live inside the Matrix, that would be the person to go to, right? She's sort of a fashioner of shells, as she talks about when she's talking around the fact that the actors died. Shells for machines to live in so that they can pretend to be humans inside the Matrix.
Yeah, the shell, that whole situation was curious to me as well. We know that she made a choice. She did something with or to the Merovingian, and it didn't go the way she planned, and he got her back somehow, and she ended up having to take on a new body because of that. Like, what a rich, interesting, curious set of things to have going on when it comes to programs, that they can reinstantiate in new bodies or something. Like, I mean, it's natural, given that they're programmed.
My soul brings me to sing of forms changed into new bodies. Ovid.
Oh, interesting. Goes all the way back to ancient mythology. Check that out.
There's a common, it's a trope in all religions, really, the idea of someone's soul or something migrating from one body to another, and especially from a human body into animal bodies. Same kind of motif you see in a lot of dreams and also religions. But yeah, I mean, I guess when Merovingian got her body, he didn't get her eyes, and her eyes are where her wisdom is, her prescience, her ability to. I guess she has a much better predictive model of humans than anyone else, and that allows her to see much farther ahead than anyone else.
So more on this whole Seraph, and then what goes on with him. I like that fetish club was kind of cool. The opening fight sequence was a little derivative, though. It was a little reminded me a lot of the first film. I do like how Seraph walks, and I like it. I've always loved his comment in the elevator. When he says, "If we are lucky, there will be one man," and then she says, "And if we're unlucky," and he says, "There will be many men." And I was just like, it's so simple and delivered so elegantly and eloquently. I was just like, yeah, I really appreciate that. And then their kind of triangle of guns in different directions when they're in the club.
Phalanx.
That was an elegant. What's that?
a good way to make your way through a nightclub.
I thought it was an elegant tactical move. I thought it was a pretty visual expression.
I also like that most of the people on the nightclub dance floor didn't really bat an eye about it. They were just like, okay, someone's coming through with guns again, you know.
Yeah, there's that. So,
sounds like a good club.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool club. The quote, "It is remarkable how similar the pattern of love is to the pattern of insanity," from the Merovingian, who's got a new look. I like his new look. What did you think about that? Was that some interesting commentary on love, or was it just kind of a throwaway line?
I mean, I guess, yeah, so love is a big theme in this movie. And before this, there's another interesting line about love from the Indian machine guy. What's his name again? Do you remember his name?
Rama.
Okay. He says, he's talking about how could it be that he, as a machine, loves this machine, which is like an analog to his daughter. And he says love is defined by, basically what he implies is that love is defined by what you would give up to keep the connection. Would you sacrifice your life? Would you sacrifice everything in your life just to keep this connection alive with someone else? And he says that as long as that criterion is satisfied, that you would give up everything just to keep a connection alive. That is love. That defines love. It's not a feeling like, oh, I feel so good. It's that behavioral pattern. What would you do? What would you give up? And that I felt like that was a very cool definition for love. It can apply just as well to humans as to machines. Any machine that's complex enough and which has that kind of connection with another entity is probably going to develop something that feels a lot like emotion in order to keep it going. So that was pretty good. Love is also like insanity. I guess what he's getting at there is the fact that the idea that you would give up your life for anything else is by definition irrational. Because when you die, your utility goes to zero. So you're not increasing your own utility. It has to be reaching beyond yourself. So if you die for a cause, you can't be benefiting yourself. You have to be benefiting something bigger than you. And in some sense, that is insanity. Because, you as an organism, you don't actually get anything physically out of it. I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. So now let's talk about Smith and the Oracle, right? Smith
Here we
and the
are.
Oracle, there's a lot going on with those. So the architect and the Oracle, right? We start with that. And the Oracle says the purpose of the architect is to balance the equation. Her purpose is to unbalance it, right? What did you take from all that?
Well, if you see is what the Matrix is doing is it's trying to solve this task of how do you predict the unpredictable, how do you control the uncontrollable, then you're going to have to throw in some chaos. If your system isn't chaotic and disrupted, then it's going to be trivially easy to predict. It won't be challenging. You won't get anything out of it. So the architect's trying to bring everything under control. And the ultimate goal of the machines that I was arguing for last time is that their goal is to actually control everything in the universe in an almost metaphysical sense. And so to do that, you're going to have to introduce some chaos. You're going to have to stir the pot. You're going to have to, you control the matrix in one state. Okay, now we're going to add some chaos. You can't control it anymore. You're going to have to work hard to control it now. You might even create a creature like Neo, which is by definition uncontrollable. And he'll have to just take him and reintegrate him into the source code. That's the only way you could possibly do it. So that's, I guess the Oracle is chaos. Architect is order. It's the standard old order-chaos dichotomy as part of this system that I think the Matrix is to sort of farm complexity, to sort of farm these uncontrollable objects like the One. Yeah.
I'm pondering all of this. So who is Smith then? She says it's your opposite, your negative, the equation trying to balance itself out. So what is that?
So let's I don't know. Let's try to figure it out. I mean, so what Smith is he's this sort of runaway sameness. So when Smith is in control of the Matrix, everyone is the same, and every place looks the same. It's got the same weather and the same buildings everywhere. I mean, here's an interesting question. Suppose Smith does take over the Matrix. If it really were the case that the machines were using the humans for heat, like Morpheus says, and I think we've established a long time ago that that ain't what's going on, then it wouldn't be any problem if everyone is just Agent Smith, because they'd still be generating heat, right? So it must be that whatever they're getting out of the Matrix has something to do with the distinctiveness of each individual person and the great diversity and the fact that there's so many distinctions between different people, and Smith is negating that.
Ooh.
Maybe what Neo is Neo
it
is
reminds
like,
me of the Borg, that we will add your biological distinctiveness to our own.
Distinctiveness to our own, exactly. So what they're doing in the Matrix is they're farming distinctiveness. This is my theory. And so maybe here's one way to think about it. What Neo is all the distinctiveness concentrated in one person. And so in order to bring the system under control when it has this hugely uncontrollable element inside of it, it has to reduce everything else to sameness. So it's like balance is shifting. So like in a good world where there's a lot of diversity, the balances are about equal. Everyone is about equally diverse. Everyone's about equally distinctive. But then you bring in one person who is incredibly distinctive in the sense that he's completely unpredictable and uncontrollable. Everything else is going to have to become extremely predictable and controllable. And so maybe that's what Smith is. They can't control Smith, though. So I guess maybe Smith is infected with that uncontrollability, but not with the distinctiveness that characterizes Neo. He doesn't have a choice. So Smith asks Neo, why do you fight? And Neo says, because I choose to. Choice is the creation of a distinction. Neo is the thing that creates distinctions. Smith's the thing that erases distinctions, and that's somehow gotten out of control. It's out of control entropy, as I was talking about last time.
I love this. This is brilliant, because this does make sense of him. This does make sense of what he's up to and why he's there as a character.
I mean, this is like he's just something that reproduces himself over and over again. He's a cancer. He's decided to go against the needs of the larger organism and just reproduce himself over and over and over and over again. Same thing. He is uncontrollable, but not in the same way. He's uncontrollable in the sense that he actually is a threat to the integrity of the system. I mean, I guess Neo is too, but Smith could actually get out of the system. He's a threat to the integrity not only of that system, but the machine world that he's embedded in and the human world, because he could make the jump to other humans, probably if he wanted to, and start taking over the human world. Smith is this sort of out-of-control, runaway, self-reproducing entropy thing, which has the capacity to devour all the levels of the simulation. I mean, he's like this perverted version. He has the uncontrollability that Neo has, but he doesn't have the ability to create distinctiveness. He only has the ability to create himself over and over again. That's what it is, right there. That's the difference. They're both uncontrollable, but Neo makes choices. He chooses. He makes distinctions, and Smith just copies himself over and over again. Just tiles the universe with copies of himself.
For some reason, that reminds me of like Minesweeper or something.
Yeah. Well, there's this weird thought experiment from the rationalist community, this community where people worry about like what's going to happen when there's an AI singularity. It's this weird thought experiment called the parable of the paperclip maximizer. And the idea is, what if we build a super powerful machine which is capable of doing anything, and we put it in control of a paperclip factory, and we give it one directive. The directive is maximize the number of paper clips produced. And the problem is, like, over 100 years, if this is a machine that can improve itself and evolve, and if it just keeps focusing on that one goal, it's going to take all the matter in the universe and reconfigure it into paper clips.
Huh.
And that's kind of what Smith's doing. He's reconfiguring the entire universe just into himself.
Into a paperclip.
Yeah. Or into one of those earplugs.
This is far worse than I thought. He's yeah, one of those earplugs. that just made it even worse. So yeah, I think we have a clear understanding for what Smith is. Now, if the Oracle knows that Smith is coming, why is she there?
Well, maybe she sees the future and she sees that there's no other way for her.
Oh, and that this is in fact the way, and that having him think that there is some chance that he can actually
Also,
succeed.
So in that final confrontation with Neo, there's a little moment where the Oracle actually takes over Smith and says something to Neo through Smith's body, and then Smith's like, "Oh, where did that come from? I didn't say that." What was it she says? She says through him. Do you remember the line?
Everything that has a beginning has an end, Neo.
Yeah, everything that has a beginning. So maybe she, with her powers of prescience, she saw that the only way out of this was to allow herself to be subsumed into Smith so that she could deliver that critical line to Neo at the critical moment.
To have him make the critical choice. Yeah, and maybe that's what's been missing in the previous reboots of The Matrix. Like her having the willingness to sacrifice herself rather than continue to exist in the hopes of making everything work. That tracks. That all tracks. I liked seeing the code flying around in those weird ways when Smith basically converts the Oracle. I was curious what you made of that.
It was cool.
Yeah, I guess that's it. We'll go with that. It was in fact cool. And then the code later on when it becomes weird. I thought that was cool too. How the shifts in the code got reflected based on the shifts in Smith's changing the whole world. I just thought that was clever.
You know, you can imagine that we can see him sort of breaking out into the real world, into higher levels of reality, like you can imagine he's spreading them into the machine city and also into human bodies. He's also probably spreading out downwards too into smaller forms. He's probably reproducing himself on a micro level inside the low level code of the Matrix everywhere. At least if I was him, that's what I'd be doing.
A fractal virus.
Yeah. He grows up and down.
In a certain way, that makes him possibly the most terrifying villain ever described in science fiction.
Scary villain.
I mean, he represents the utter antinomy of everything that anyone might possibly stand for ever.
Yeah, almost by definition.
I mean, that's actually really cool. That's really novel. That's really unique. I've never seen that done before anywhere else or anything like that. I mean, we have moments like in Discovery Season 1 where, oh no, it's going to eat the mycelial network and the whole multiverse is going to be screwed.
Yeah, they say it for like 1 second in the last episode or something.
Yeah, and then
they might perturbed when they realize this.
yeah, they're not that upset, and that was just the writers trying to raise the stakes because the universe itself has been saved before in earlier episodes or whatever. But so this is actually philosophically interesting and salient and fun to play with and think about. So there were a couple other things in this movie. The Bane guy, right? This Bane guy totally has Agent Smith down. That actor, it's a different actor than Agent Smith, but it was just so good.
It really seemed like Agent Smith.
Yeah, and I loved Kid's. His name is Kid. He never actually gets a real name. His interaction with Captain Mifune, right? The guy in the APU. Yeah, I thought that was just noble and fun and all about human solidarity in this really cool way. Go ahead, though.
So here's my one criticism of this movie, and I realize it's actually also a criticism of Reloaded. So in these battle scenes, where these incredible battle scenes with the huge mecha gears and they're shooting the guns and the guys are coming through and there's the huge drill that's going in, there's fire everywhere and there's great music and these incredible scenes. I don't really feel much connection to these characters because this Captain Locke or Mifune, I don't even remember his name. We haven't seen him before. We haven't built a connection to it. And also there's that scene where, is it Naomi who's going through the service tube to try to make it into Zion? And there's all these shots that are clearly...
Oh, yeah.
There's all these
sort of one-off characters
or whatever. There's no one that could possibly drive through a service tunnel. And then they suddenly cut to her and show her driving and there's heroic music. They're clearly trying to build her up as a big hero, but I barely remember her name, man. And so I guess, I'm realizing now, and this is my only criticism of this movie, I'm realizing now that what Reloaded did not do, which it could have done, is set up new characters that we really deeply care about. Like, imagine if that guy who's in the mecha armor thing fighting the machines and getting horrifically killed, imagine if that was Morpheus or something, or someone you really deeply care about, someone you know deeply. And it's not. Like, I don't know these characters. So there you go.
Yeah, we didn't get enough time. Yeah, I mean that's one of the critical on the commentaries by the critics, by the film critics. They say, all right, we don't know these characters, we don't care about these. Just leave us with Trinity and Neo and Morpheus, and let us concentrate on interesting stuff that has to do with the Matrix. You created this whole world, let's stay there. You don't have to create another world. And I think that all gets sort of redeemed, which does not mean the same thing as totally excused, but redeemed through the interpretation we developed last week with like this representation of the body and working through the traumas of the body through these chaotic.
Oh yeah, I think on a philosophical and on many levels, it's wonderful. It's just this character level. Like if they just tinkered with Reloaded a little bit to make us care about these characters back then it could have been a lot more impactful here.
Yeah, if we had been kind of made clear who these people were, for sure. And let's see, I like, actually, I love and adore this comment, "The honor is still mine," from Morpheus to Neo. I thought that was a really great line.
I like how you can see that Morpheus's tone and attitude has changed. Like, even in the way he stands and the way he looks around, you can see it in his eyes. He no longer has that sort of insane conviction that he had in Reloaded.
He's wisely tempered based on his own spiritual journey. Yeah. It's interesting that there's a contrast between Neo and, actually there's a contrast and then a parallelism between Neo and Morpheus. They both go on a spiritual journey, and Morpheus's is the path of the person who thinks that they know what's going on, but releases the judgments, opinions, assessments, views of their ego in order to see what truly is as and for what it is. And then there's this whole thing where Niobe, where he says to Niobe, "Oh, you never told me you believed in the one." And she's like, "I don't, but I do believe in him." And so it's like faith in some human, and in what that human can accomplish or what difference that person can make. It's like the Christ. What do they call it? The incarnation of Christ is fully 100% man and 100% God at the same time. It's something they distinguished at the Council of Chalcedon or whatever.
I forgot the term for that. But
homoousios, of the same substance. No, that's another Christological distinction. Man, those were fun times when I was studying all that stuff. Very interesting. Just a side note, Saint Nicholas is famous for getting into a fist fight at the Council of Nicaea, the same Saint Nicholas upon which Santa Claus is based.
You mean the same Saint Nicholas who is Santa Claus?
Exactly. I'm not going to go that far and say that Santa Claus exists, as you just did.
Santa Claus is a program from outside the Matrix. I really enjoyed bringing joy to children.
Anytime you hear a story about vampires or werewolves,
Santa Claus.
That's right.
Imagine if they had said Santa Claus in this movie.
That would have been great. The Easter Bunny.
The Tooth Fairy.
Christ.
It would have really completely ruined the pathos. It would have completely ruined the gravitas, of that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then Neo goes on this journey of more and more clarity and certainty on what he has to do without having the backdrop of dogma about himself to rely upon. So Morpheus is more about, like, how do I compose myself in the face of what I know about reality? and Neo's more about like, what do I actually legitimately have to do as kind of a spiritual vocational calling, and even without explanation. And this is how, for some people, intuition ends up working, is I feel like I should be doing this thing. I don't know why, and when I do it, things work out. This is straight up from Feel Free to Prosper by Marilyn Janae, and a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, like, it's not the right time for this, is the kind of thing that they say, or I just don't feel aligned. And so Morpheus, doesn't quite develop that. The Matrix Online maybe develops him in that way. There was a really great MMORPG that Steve played, actually, called The Matrix Online, that was around for a couple years after the Matrix Revolutions, and the story kind of continues there in interesting ways. Morpheus is assassinated, and the code of Neo is broken up into different shards that are distributed throughout the Matrix, and there's all these inter-conflicts. And anyway, that's a whole other podcast, as well as the Animatrix films, which we might be covering later this year. Morpheus, he's got his own character arc, and it's really appreciable. It's really cool. So to bring it back to that, it sounds like my question of, do the Smith clones retain any of their individual personalities? The Oracle Smith thing, that is and maybe she was the only one who had that level of strength of character, so to speak, or programming, to actually retain her expression through the Smith sort of copy over process.
Yeah.
And then, I was curious about this final fight, like why Smith doesn't just overwhelm Neo. Like, I guess it's symbolic, and maybe Smith legit has the machismo and the arrogance to feel like, all right, well, I should be able to beat him with only one copy of myself, rather than just completely overwhelming him.
If I was Smith, though, I would start off being like, I'm going to be honorable and fight you just one-on-one, and then when it wasn't working, I would say, okay, 2 billion copies of me, go.
I mean, that clearly is what he was thinking, right? And then he's so mystified. Like, when Neo gives in, it's the weakest thing overcomes the hard. It's straight from the Tao Te Ching. Like, surrender is the path to freedom, or something like this. There's a whole other commentary we could do just relating the Tao Te Ching to this film. But I'm curious what you thought of what exactly happens when Neo is transformed and becomes Smith and explodes, and then all the Smiths explode. Like, from a computer science perspective, and I could speak to the spiritual once we've got something in place. But yeah, what is exactly happening?
So my initial theory, and I guess that's what I'll start with right now, is that so Neo is hooked into the machine mainframe in the machine city with all these cords and stuff. The way he's hooked in might be a way which is actually deeper than the way you would usually hook someone into the Matrix. So once Neo is absorbed into Smith, that means that the machines now have a direct link into Smith themselves. And because at this point maybe they've come to understand that incomprehensibility and uncontrollability, which is Neo, that means that through him they can now control Smith. Because the thing that makes Smith viral, that makes him uncontrollable, is that he got this little piece of Neo's code inside of him, right? So I think that's basically what it is. Neo provides an interface through which the machines can understand Smith well enough to zap him and kill him.
Oh, so they annihilate him, and then they reboot the Matrix, which is the thing that we witnessed with the deja vu of the cat, right?
Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to do a lot of memory wiping. A lot of people have some really strange dreams.
Everyone.
They're going to have to keep a careful eye on the therapist who might start noticing everyone was having the same dream.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of Promethea, actually, which is this really great comic book series where everyone at the end of the series has this dramatic spiritual enlightenment experience of oneness with everyone else in the universe and an appreciation for the unique perspective and sympathetic compassion for each and every person in the universe. And it's just like the coolest thing to ever happen in a comic book. And I don't think exactly that happened here, but it's kind of what I was reminded of and what I like to imagine might have happened in the distribution of the Neo code into each and every person throughout the Matrix as they had their sunglasses explode. Because that's basically what we saw with Smith's sunglasses exploding for each of them. I think from a spiritual perspective, when one of us, it's interesting. Like when one of us embraces the fullness of our destiny and surrenders our will to the divine, on some level we're making that step for all of us. It might not be in a way that each and every can experience at the same time like this, but at least metaphorically, the distribution of that surrender into the human species. Like there was a fundamental shift in the nature of what was possible for human being, qua being, that happens when Neo makes his choice from within the unique context of understanding and the unique context of what it means to be making that choice for him. Like he's basically the embodiment of the free will of human being.
Yeah.
And to use it in that particular way. It's interesting, Richard, because like I'm now confronted with interesting questions around like theodicy. Not the problem of evil exactly, but the problem of like why do we have free will? If there is a purpose with which we align that makes us happiest and function best, then why did the superconscious mind, God, spirit that we are, whatever, give us free will? And this is a question I have yet to answer, actually. So
yeah, I mean, I guess like the first pass answer based on only the first Matrix movie is because the world was designed by demiurgic machines that just want our energy. And that's why we have the ability to choose a thing that's not best for us. But then the Reloaded, or really the Matrix Revolutions thesis is that no, the best possible demiurge would want everyone to realize their full potential. And now we're circling back to the question that you're raising. If that is the best possible demiurge, and we are in such a universe. But so if you just forced everyone to do what was best for them, it seems like there's some way in which that's empty. Or so look, if the machines are getting anything out of the humans, it's from the humans' ability to choose, right? Because that's the thing that humans have that the machines, I mean, complex machines do have it, but that's like the manifestation of human will. That's the most interesting thing about humans. The most interesting thing that the machines could be getting out of the Matrix is harvesting people's wills. And so if you just force them along the rails to do what's best for them, they're not going to be making any choices, and you're not going to be getting anything out of it. It's like every choice a human makes when they're living their life in the Matrix, that's actually contributing something to some giant computation that's going on in the machine city to do something. I don't know, some incredible thing that they find interesting. It's actually the choices that are the computations that they're getting out of the Matrix. And if the people aren't making choices, there you go. You're not getting anything out of it. There's also this discussion, this idea that what the Oracle introduced into the Matrix was actually the idea of choice. So the architect in the first iterations of the Matrix says they failed because people didn't have an underlying sense that they were choosing this reality. So I guess in those earlier versions of the Matrix, people were choosing about small things in their lives, but they didn't have a sense that they were deep down choosing the nature of reality they wanted to live in. And by giving them that deeper choice, they got a lot more juice out of whatever they were getting out of them.
Yeah, something new became possible, something really beautiful and interesting and exotic.
Another way to think about it is that what the Matrix is solving is a giant search problem, where the problem is find your best life. And basically, if the machines are dictating what everyone should do inside the Matrix, I can't see how they're getting anything out of the Matrix in that case. I think what they're getting out of the Matrix is maybe one thing that you could say they're doing is they're observing people's choices. And they're setting up little life choices for people to make such that if people choose what's best for them, that's also going to solve whatever computational problem the machines are trying to solve.
Yeah, the problem is choice, they say in the second film.
The problem is choice makes things uncontrollable. So this choice farming concept is never going to be sustainable. You're always going to have ones. You're always going to have Gödel sentences. The problem is the axiom of choice.
Yeah, exactly. So it was slightly inaccurately stated, is what we might say.
Unfortunately, I wish it was the case that the axiom of choice was actually like the set theory axiom that created Gödel sentences, because then it would all be so perfect, right? It's not, though. You get them even without the axiom of choice.
It's close enough. This is the form of the story I choose to believe in, which really ultimately, what's funny, Richard, is we're doing with all of our episodes and movies what Neo does here is we're actualizing our ability to choose something meaningful in the face of infinitely many possibilities for choice, something that actually empowers and sustains and nurtures and nourishes us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on that note, the last two things I have to say are, did you ever see Lost?
No.
Okay, well, Harold Perrineau, also known as Link in this movie, he goes, woohoo! And on Lost, he's famous for saying, whoa! Whoa! Which is his son, who gets, stolen by these bad guys on the island on Lost. And so it's just funny to compare that with this. I realized that it was the same actor as I was rewatching today, and I was like, it's that guy again. Or not today, just recently when I watched it. And then the whole film series actually really feels like a series of comic books. It feels really well done in that, and really entertaining. Not that that's necessarily the most important thing about it, but it is a thing, and it is a cool thing. It is a thing that I appreciate. So, yeah, Richard, I'm going to give this, I think I already gave this, was it a 9.9 out of 10, or was it a 10? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I
think
remember
it may
what I
have
said either.
upgraded.
I'm going to say 9.5 out of 10 where the points off are for that characterization stuff I was talking about. But everything else is great and incredible.
Yeah, I'm just going to go with a 10. And are you saying you got a 10 as well? Is that what's going on here?
I'm giving it a 9.5.
Oh, because of that stuff with the character?
Yeah, as discussed.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Well, as the Oracle says, everything that has a beginning has an end, Richard.
As it says in the I Ching, 终则有始，天行也. Every end? Okay.